Are you an HVAC professional looking to set your business apart? Then the Leading HVAC podcast is your go-to resource. I'm Kimon Hines, coach and trainer at SVE. And in this podcast, we'll share stories of success and struggle from leaders in the HVAC industry. You'll hear from experienced executives, managers, and innovators, providing you with the hard-earned insights from their journeys. These insights will equip you with the knowledge you need to navigate challenges and truly lead in the ever-evolving HVAC world. Welcome back to the Leading HVAC podcast. I'm your host, Kimon Hines. Super excited that you've joined us again today. If this is your first time watching this, we want to invite you to subscribe to the podcast. If you have not subscribed yet and you've been watching before, go ahead and subscribe. And I guarantee you, you're going to gain so much from this episode that you're going to want to share this with someone. Today, our guest on this episode is Jim Probst. Jim is the president of George Brazil, a company based in the Phoenix, Arizona area. And Jim is a leadership expert. I'm giving him that title. And Jim, today we're excited to have you as a part of our podcast. So welcome to the Leading HVAC podcast.
Thank you, Timo. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, Jim, tell us a little bit about how you got into the HVAC business. Tell us about your path into this world.
Happy to. So my path is a little more unconventional. So my background is more early stage, high growth business development and manufacturing. But in that career, it required a lot of travel. I traveled all over the world, a lot. And when I brought my fourth child home, I decided I needed to change that lifestyle. My brother was a contractor in the family. He had sold his business years before. And we decided, I need to be part of this community and be part of the kids' lives. So we're going to start a company, a local company. His background is HVAC. So we started quality home maintenance in 2006 and, start growing it from there.
Okay. Now, we talked about you being the president at George Brazil. And before I hit record, I asked you this question so that I'll ask you again. What was the size of George Brazil and when did you take over leadership there?
George Brazil, when we acquired it from George, was doing about 2.2 million of revenue in HVAC. It was losing about $500,000 to $700,000 a year, and that frustrated the heck out of George. He couldn't find a way to make money off it. So from that frustration, we were able to acquire that business from him.
Yeah. And what year was this?
That was in 2009.
Right. And just for the benefit of our listeners and viewers who aren't familiar with George Brazil, just so that you understand the conversation that we're going to have today, where is George Brazil now in terms of revenue and,
We'll close out this year around 48 million.
Wow. So we're talking about 15 years and multiples of growth, and I'm sure it's profitable now with this growth.
Yeah.
Okay. So Jim, help me. I'm a contractor. I can relate to where you took over George Brazil. About $2 million in revenue, but not seeing a lot of profit. What are some of the major moves that you and your team made that have shifted things and the trajectory of this company?
Really, in a simple sense, it's the same stuff we focus on today. We focus on then, and that's execution. Average tickets, close rates, high service levels, high pricing. So we would deliver the highest service levels in the valley. We made sure we got paid for it. And we had the best trained technicians, so heavy into training the workforce, salesmen, technicians, all the back office operations. It's equally as much work to scale the operations to keep up with that growth as it is to put in the training for the workforce to generate that growth. So those are the two main challenges to have that kind of growth. One is back office operations, and the other is execution, doing better, more calls, better execution on every call.
Okay. So Jim, I am in that 2 million range. You come in, you see this company, and you mentioned the principles, right? Making sure we're executing, we train staff, and we're pricing correctly. Which which one came first and how, like, just walk us through maybe the first year of how you roll this out.
Um, Delivering high service levels has to come first, and that's what we train. So you can't have high pricing without high service levels. If you price yourself at the top of the market, you're not delivering top of the market service. Generally, that doesn't work. So first thing we did is took over the workforce, and we trained. The whole premise of SBE was developed from this concept that we're going to train to give the best service level, the most attention, take the most time, and then price our products accordingly and deliver on that with the pricing. So that to me goes first. From there, everything builds off it. From there, we can get the right price, we can have the right margins, I can afford to do the right stuff now as a company. As a leader of a company, first and foremost, you have to be able to afford to make good decisions. And if you're a struggling company, you're not making the profits it should be, it's hard to be a good corporate citizen. It's hard to be a good company and a good leader to your employees if you're not making the right amount of profit. If you are making the right amount of profit, then it becomes easy to be a good corporate citizen, a good part of the community, and a good company, and good culture to work for. So it's not a chicken and the egg. To me, it starts first with we have to be delivering a well-trained workforce, a good product, then we have the right to charge for it. And that drives our profits. And that, again, allows us to continue to do the things we need to do to grow, to market, to attract more employees, and build out the team and the company as we can to support it.
Yeah. Our guest today is Jim Probst, president of George Brazil. And Jim, you're walking us through some strategic moves that we need to make to grow our companies. Now, I'm sure there is someone pushing back saying, Jim, you got great workers, you're able to deliver great service, but I can't find good workers. And there's a statement I've heard you make to me before that says there's no shortage of good workers, just a shortage of training. Kind of unpack that for us because maybe someone doesn't believe that, right? They can't find good technicians. The ones that are good leave and they're wondering, how do I deliver that excellent service you talk about without good workers?
Well, and you hit the nail on the head. It takes good training, great training. I'm a believer that every day, every employee gets dressed, comes to work to do a good job. If they're not doing a good job, that's on me for not training them and communicating and help them understand what that is. So we're a very positive reinforcement company. We have a very healthy culture, and we can attract people who want to be with George Brazil by our brand, our reputation, our image, and then we train them. You can't be in this business and have the success that we've enjoyed without a complete commitment to training the workforce. That's our factory. Our people are our factory. And so we have to have a very well-oiled machine, and that means very well-trained workforce. That's first, second, and third thing that has to happen.
Yeah. Now, this is going to be a plug for SBE here, but talk to us about training. What does training look like at George Brazil? And for a contractor who is saying, I don't know how to train my employees, what would you suggest to them?
Well, SBE was born out of the training we do at George Brazil. So that was about, 10 or 12 years ago now. And people in the industry, asked us that long ago, 12 years ago, if we'd come and help some of their contractors, some of our supply chain partners. And we did, and we got businesses turned around just supporting our supply chain partners. And through that, it grew into a business. And we've grown that business in parallel to what we do at George Brazil. Training's a difficult thing to have and master. It takes a lot of resources, a lot of commitment. Fortunately, we were able to generate enough profits in those early years, we could afford to reinvest it. Our reinvestment of profits was always into training, always into personnel, always into the leadership team. That's what it takes. It's easy to get caught into the trap of too busy. I don't have the time. I can't get a good guy. I don't know how to train. That's a trap you get into. And the three things we focus on at SBE and we focused on at George Brazil in the early years was first thing we have to do is be profitable. If we're not profitable, then we're working on the wrong things. So let's make this company profitable. Let's focus on execution on our calls, average tickets, close rates, service levels. After that, we have to make it scalable. And this goes to the back office. So once we are generating profits, we can afford to invest in the company into the back office, into the operational leadership, the processes, the SOPs, the controls, so we can actually grow. It's that back office leadership and operations that enables revenue growth. And then sustain, so we have three pillars: profits, scalable, and sustainability. Sustainability comes now into the management team and the leadership team. Do we have the right leaders, the right personnel? Are they trained right to support the culture we built and to support the growth our appetite was? But at the beginning, it starts with profitability. If you are not dropping 12 to 15+% of the bottom line, you really can't afford to make the right decisions to grow. And those right decisions to grow center around training that workforce to deliver higher value.
So deliver higher value. Make sure you're training your employees, training your team, coaching them to deliver that high value. Make sure you're delivering a good product. And then you talk about pricing. And Jim, I've been on so many calls with you, and raising prices always comes up, right? So talk to us about the challenge that some may face. If I raise my prices, there's a company down the road that's going to undercut me. I'm going to lose business. So I'm afraid to raise prices.
And you said the word that resonates with everybody: I'm afraid to do it because I'm afraid, it's too high. I can tell you with absolute certainty, if you're in a residential maintenance service replacement market, AOR market like we are, it is not price sensitive. If you deliver high service levels, people are fine paying high prices. In fact, they would rather pay high prices, get good, reliable service all the time. And so if your prices aren't right, you can't do that. So customers, a lot of years of me testing that theory, the consumers aren't that price sensitive. They really want to make sure they have someone they can count on, they trust, is going to do the work and do good quality. The challenge to overcome is not from the consumers, it's from the workforce. It's what you said. The workforce is afraid. If I raise my price, I'm going to lose customers. Or a bigger thing is our service technicians and salesmen aren't usually comfortable talking about money and talking about price. So when we talk about training, we're training how to have those conversations, how to introduce the conversation of money, of budgets, of what can you afford? This stuff is expensive. So from a training and leadership perspective, our focus is training the workforce how to have those conversations. Rarely, if ever, does it really hit the customer that they're afraid to pay it. Now, there are always situations where people have fixed incomes and budgets, and we usually have a broad product line. We can find a solution for them. But if you're not priced right and you're not delivering the right service levels, you're not going to be profitable, not to the extent you need to be to grow a business.
Yeah.
So it starts with the business owner overcoming their fear of money, because that's really, it starts there, their fear. If they have that fear, whether directly or indirectly, their workforce will have that fear.
Yeah.
They have to overcome. That's the single biggest obstacle to overcome, is the fear about talking about money and the higher prices.
Jim, you have any tips for that business owner who might have that fear? What can he or she do to overcome that fear?
Well, it starts with them. It starts with them overcoming their own fear. And if they're afraid to raise prices, they think they're going to lose market share, they have to come to grips with it, because it's just not true. It's a fear. It's a phobia. We have never lost market share because we raised our prices. As long as you deliver the service levels that warrant a fair price like that, a high price even. It's communicating with the workforce. So we've done a lot of things. My favorite thing is we would do a secret shopper. So we'd have one or two of our office people have the big marketing companies in the Valley come and give them estimates. And then we could show, this is where your competition's at. And when I say big marketing companies, we generally don't do that with kind of the small 1, 2, 3 man shops because they're not running this kind of business that we want to emulate.
Right.
We want to emulate the big, strong, successful, profitable companies. So when we have them come in for the secret shopper and give us estimates, it's clear we're way below the market because that's the market we want to participate in. I don't want to participate in and compete against a small guy, even if I am a small guy. Even when we were doing 2 million in revenue, that's not who I want to be. I want to be positioned in there with the high margin, high profitability companies, and that's where I want to understand their pricing. So the secret shopper approach is a great way to get that intel and find out where's the market, not only on equipment, but on repairs, on everything. And then we use that data and that information to talk to the workforce. It says, look, here's your competition. Here's where they're priced at. There's always someone cheaper, but if you lose it to price, it means you're not delivering the value, the service levels you need. So we never lose the price. If we do, it happens. But we deliver the right service levels. If you deliver the right service levels, the right amount of value, people are going to pay for it.
Jim, that's such a good point.
More money.
Yeah. Jim, such a good point. And understanding price is not the only determinant of people's decisions, especially in this market. And something that I get from you, you mentioned average tickets, you mentioned close rates, now you're mentioning gross revenue. There is a huge focus on data and knowing that data. And maybe some contractor leader watching this maybe not paying attention to those numbers. Because sometimes it's painful, if we're honest, Jim. If I'm losing money, to be reminded that I'm losing money, for some people, like, I don't want to see. So talk to us about, one, the importance of data, and what are some numbers every HVAC home service person should be looking at on a regular basis, and what does regular look like? Long question.
So the importance of data, if there's a consistent theme is you have to measure everything. We measure everything. So it's a blanket statement. So to get more granular, we're talking about value creation. We're talking about pricing. We're talking about profitability. So, the secret shopper, for example, is a great example. How do I know where I need to be priced? Well, I want to understand where the competition's priced at, that who I want to compete with, who I want to be when we grow up. And I've always started there. I would communicate that data to the workforce and that eventually get them to understand and be comfortable with the customer will pay these higher prices. The training was always focused on then higher service levels because you have to create that value. If you don't create the value, you come in and burn through a call, you are not going to get the value, the prices you need to get. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about data and measuring in the context of this call about profitability and pricing, it's understanding where the real successful companies are. And you're going to learn they're much higher priced than a lot of the smaller contractors. And then the training side of it to deliver the value and the service levels. We have a ton of processes, training that we do that we share with SBE on how to deliver the service levels, how to conduct yourself in the home, how to have that real tangible value created for that homeowner, and how to charge them accordingly.
Yeah.
So it all intertwines together. There's no one magic bullet. Do this and it works. It's a culture. It's a leadership team. It's philosophy. It's about being the highest valued guy. And we want to be the highest value in the customer's eyes. We give them more value than they pay for at our pricing levels.
Yeah. Now, Jim, as you were growing, what were some of the growth barriers that you had to break through? Maybe there was when we got to this level, we hit something that we had to, and how did you overcome those?
So we had a big one at $15-16 million, and that really had to do with the leadership team, the workforce. I learned that year, it's like I don't have the organization. And now we're talking about more back office infrastructure, SOPs, all of that kind of stuff. And so for us to go beyond that 15 million, I had to do a reset on that. So we brought in new, really good operators, Heather Robinson, my old VP of operations, and I and some others, we just started systematically going through our back office operations and making sure they're as robust as our sales training. And so there was a year and a half, maybe two, that was our entire focus. So and I don't remember the exact years. I think it was 2010 and 2011. We grew by $10 million each of those years. Mm-hmm. And we had our share of mistakes. When I say we focus on the back office, back-to-back $10 million years of growth in that time frame, we were imploding operationally. So we did a reset. We had to bring in new talent, and we had to really comb through every single process and make sure we understand it. It's the right process. It's scalable, the right SOPs, the right training, the right KPIs, the right everything. And then we just kept systematically growing from there. And we had our down years, like everybody. Growth never happens like that.
Yeah.
Growth is like this.
Yeah.
We had plenty of down years in there. We grew back-to-back $10 million years, and then we declined by $4 million the next year. We build it back up. And so it's, market conditions are dynamic. Workforce is dynamic. If there's one recommendation, you have to be relentless. You never can rest. Running these companies and growing these businesses, I like the analogy. It's like pushing a boulder up a hill that has no top. Just has no top. You keep pushing and you never stop. That's the industry we're in. When I talk about profitability, scalability, and sustainability are the way I look at these businesses, the way I try to advise people. Sustainability, you're still pushing the boulder up, but you have a strong team doing it for you.
Right.
But that you never can stop pushing. As soon as you do, you slide back.
Yeah.
You never get to the top and say, okay, we're here. This is nice and peaceful. You have to have a good team that's well trained, and then you get that feeling and that sensation about it's nice and peaceful.
Yeah.
It's always as chaotic, but you have a much stronger organization managing.
I love that term, relentless.
You have to be relentless. You can't let your guard down. If you do, you slide back.
Yeah. Now we're recording this in October of 2024, right? So people may be watching this in a different time. But for this year, what are some of the lessons you've learned from leading in your role in 2024? What's 2024 taught you about the HVAC world and leadership in that world?
How challenging market conditions can be. So this year, we had our very strong growth plan in place. We had a marketing budget. We doubled our marketing budget to enable that growth plan. We had the workforce trained and built up. We were ready to go, and the market conditions thought differently. So it was a very difficult year. The combination of election and fatigue from COVID and all these supply chain challenges, whatever they were, people were making the decision to repair more than to replace. So our service revenue was up huge. Our install revenue was down. And we couldn't market our way through it. So it was one of those I'm not going to say down year on revenue, but it was a tough year to pull off the revenue we did. Mm-hmm. And again, it's hard to, when you look at trying to explain market conditions, it's very difficult. I hate that as an excuse because it's easy to have and it's easy to say, and it's very hard to quantify. Mm-hmm. But when I look at all the quantifiable things about the number of people we had, the training levels, the marketing, all of that, we were very much in a very strong growth mode, but the market didn't deliver the same volume of calls. Really, the execution was always high. We just didn't get the same volume of calls as we did in 22 this year.
Yeah, yeah. Now,
it's a tough year. 23, 24 were absolutely tough years.
Yeah. Well, now, Jim, you don't have a crystal ball in front of you, but if you did, what are you seeing for 2025 in this industry? And how can I, as a leader, be prepared for 2025?
So 2025, when I look at my crystal ball, and I like that term because I use it all the time. My job as a leader, and every president, every business owner's job as a leader is to have a crystal ball and look into it and try and understand. Fundamentally, that's what we all have to do. You look at 25, we're going to be fraught with probably supply chain challenges because the new refrigerant, new platform, every brand has to accommodate. and I'm already hearing about supply chain challenges in doing it. There's going to be big price increases coming at us because this new refrigerant's much higher priced, much more environmentally friendly, and that's why they're doing it. But it comes with much higher priced equipment, 10-15% higher. Not sure political climate. I know this is a tough one, the election year, but next year, I think between those two things, we're going to have our hands full. As I tell people, most of the consumers hear all this noise. Supply chain, new refrigerants, new stuff, prices are going up. They're expecting higher prices. As I tell our workforce, I tell our SBE partner companies, don't disappoint them. Raise your prices. You cannot absorb price increase. You cannot absorb cost increase, rather. You have to take advantage of that. If your costs go up 8%, raise your prices 11%. Take the opportunity to enhance your margins in these kind of times. Anytime you have big disruptions in the market or in an industry, that's a time to take advantage of that and get better pricing, better margins out of it. But again, it goes back to execution, service levels, all that. People are expecting prices to go up next year. Don't disappoint.
I love that. Jim, I've heard you say that, and I don't get tired of hearing that. People expect the price increase. Don't disappoint them. All right, I want to slip in a question that one of our contractors, I asked him, I'm meeting with Jim. What is a question you have? And by the way, if you're watching this and you're not an SBE contractor and you're getting a lot of value from this episode, schedule a call with our SBE team because we get access to Jim on a monthly basis. You get to ask him questions just like the ones I'm asking him. You can ask him your questions. So if you're watching this and you're not an SBE contractor, go to sbeodyssey.com, schedule a call, because when you join the SBE community, you have access to getting these questions answered like the ones we're talking about. But here's his question, Jim. After the foundation is in place, my business is solid, when do you know you can do an acquisition? Because he wants to start growing. They're in a market that is pretty limited, so he's thinking about an acquisition. When should he start looking at that?
Well, I love acquisition. So there's always two growth levers I deploy. One is execution, service levels, the conversation you're having on this call. The other is acquisitions, tuck-in acquisitions. We've done, in our journey to where we're at, I think we've done 3 or 4 tuck-in acquisitions. And so the main thing you have to do is make sure you have your operations in order. So if you're not organized, if you don't have the right leadership team, the right processes, then doing an acquisition could be crippling. So really, my advice is you have to make sure your operations in order. It's clear of the products you're selling, the SOPs, how you run call, how you process the information in the back office. Because what you're going to do, you're going to flip a switch and maybe increase your capacity, your volume by 50%. Can you handle a 50% volume increase? So with acquisitions, I look at it's very transactional. So I can have, in this example, 50% more technicians. What happens if they all quit? Because change usually can affect that decision. So I have to have a team in place to run those calls at the levels we want in case people start leaving, and a plan to hire and train replacements. I have to look at the volume coming into the call center. Our inbound calls are going to increase by 50%. Our paperwork volume is going to increase by 50%. All of these things are going to increase by 50%. Do I have the infrastructure to handle it? So you toggle through that. You have to, before you say, I want to do an acquisition, you want to make sure you are, from a sales, service, technician perspective, ready to handle it. And from a back office, you're ready to handle it. And typically, the best time to sequence acquisitions just out of seat. Mm-hmm. So we look at them in this year in Q1 and Q4. I have a runway of time to fix problems as they occur because our volume in general is down. I've got 30 days, 90 days, 120 days to solve these problems that occur. So when season comes, we're functioning at the high levels on both brands, ours and the one we acquired. Yeah. So I have advised many SBE customers, business colleagues of mine on acquisitions. Many of them have done it and had lots of success. And 100% of the time they came back and said, boy, you were right. I lost a lot of people. Change is change. When
Yeah.
anytime you introduce change, there's some people who decide to leave.
Yeah.
And you have to be prepared for that. Increase in volume, loss of tax, how do you deal with it? Loss of
Yeah.
sales.
Great, great,
Sometimes
great.
timing is the main thing, time of the year. So you don't want to do it in the Phoenix market. I don't want to be tucking somebody in May or June.
All right.
Um,
Yeah.
doesn't give us a long runway to solve problems.
You want to do it in the off season.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, Jim, I have to get to our rapid fire questions, but I have to ask this question. I'm a contractor. I don't have maybe as much of the business background as you may have. What are some ways I can improve my leadership abilities?
Like anything, self-reflection has to be a big part of it. You have to be able to understand your strengths, your weaknesses, what you're good at. I always say, what's your superpower? Everybody has a superpower that they're really good at. And then you have to understand, well, what's my weakness? How do I build out my organization to start to accommodate for some of my weaknesses? It's no room for egos in this. We all have weaknesses. I have more than most. I have a superpower. And my superpower is building good teams and organizations.
Nice.
It's through that I have the platform to do what we do.
Yeah, you did. You did. So it sounds like self-awareness. And maybe I'll put a little plug in here. Sounds like leaders put themselves in an environment where they get coached and trained as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You don't go to sleep one day and wake up in the morning with knowledge.
Yeah.
Knowledge that it's all through education, through training, through experience.
Yeah.
And you can't be afraid of it. You have to embrace it and try to learn and improve yourself as a leader. Leadership is one of the hardest things.
Yeah.
People have to come into work and want to work hard for you. You can't make them.
Yeah.
You have to want to do it. You have to create the environment for that to happen.
Jim, this is so good. By the way, this is probably my longest interview because I just want to keep asking you questions all day, but I can't. You're busy. So I want to end with these rapid fire questions. It's few questions and you answer them in 30 seconds or less. Is that all
All
right?
right.
All right.
Shoot.
What's the best business book that you've read?
Switch. Switch is a book that talks about how to change behaviors with small, subtle things. Change behaviors in people.
Okay. All right. Switch. Okay. What's one thing Jim Probst wants to be better at as a leader in the next year?
Um, that's a hard one to answer. It takes a lot of self-reflection. I do a lot of self-reflection. So, to me, to be a better leader, I always want to be a better leader. That's my role in the company. That's my role in the business I'm involved with. You know what else? What's the one thing I want to improve? I thoroughly love and enjoy working with my SBE counterpart companies. I like helping people. I'm a giver, not a taker, and I get a lot of pleasure and satisfaction from doing it. If I look forward to the next year or two, what do I want to do more of? I want to do more of that. Running a business here, I've got a good team, and I'm in the sustainable phase of this business. So I've got the flexibility working with you, working with SBE, working with these different contractor friends of mine. They're trying to do acquisitions, they're having problems. I enjoy it. I enjoy that. So I don't know if I answered your question, but
No, that's it. That's it.
yeah.
Listen, we want more of that in the next year. Absolutely. All right. How do you de-stress and find ways to enjoy life?
Well, I have a 16-month-old grandson, so he's
Oh,
probably at the top of the list. I do a lot of golfing. I enjoy golfing. De-stressing is very important. So, and stress is a funny thing. Stress is a relative thing. If you lived your life in high stress, frankly, you can handle more stress. So my life today is not high stress. Again, I've got a good team, good people around me, good decisions are made, good family. I'm a very blessed person. But over the years, that's a hard question. Over the years, that's not always been the case. Over the years, there's a lot of stress. So here's how I would answer it. How do I handle stress over the years when I had it? And it's the only way I could ever do it is I have to push through it. I have to work harder. What would cause me stress? What causes me stress is typically two things: not being in control and not being organized. So things are happening, I'm not in control of. Things are happening, I can't stay on top of them, I'm not organized for it. So my solution to it, I just work harder in those periods. I have to stay in front of this. The crystal ball many times is cloudy, it's not clear.
Yeah.
It's just, I push through it with just frankly working more when those times are needed.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you, Jim. But do more golfing now. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. That's good. And that 16-month-old grandbaby. Okay, I'll slip in one more after this one, but last main rapid fire question. If you could go back in time to when you took over at George Brazil, what's one piece of advice you would give to yourself looking now with the benefit of hindsight? What's one piece of advice you would have given to yourself then?
The same thing I've told people, answered your question, what do you have to be prepared for an acquisition? We didn't have our operations in place. We didn't have all that stuff in place. So
Mhm.
we were ill prepared for the growth that came at us from that. So operationally, you couldn't have done something wrong in the way we didn't do that year. Because that year we grew by $10 million.
Yeah.
We went from
Yeah.
6 million to 16 million. And we were not prepared for that operation.
Mhm.
In hindsight, I would say let's make sure we have our SOPs, our process, all that better defined, better in place, better trained people. Again, back office stuff, warehousing, inventory. That's what we did wrong with that acquisition. What
Yeah.
we did right overcame it, which was revenue generation and profits. But the lack of having a good operational platform to handle that ate up a lot of our profits.
Yeah. Jim, you are one of our speakers for the conference. And by the way, thank you so much. This has been an amazing episode. I told you at the beginning you'd want to share this episode with someone. Jim, you're one of the speakers for the conference. An SB contractor is considering coming. Give them one reason why they should show up in Orlando, February 27th and 28th for the conference, based on what you're going to be sharing.
Well, it's not just what I share, it's what that conference is all about. So there's a lot of best practices shared, a lot of peers there, not just in the seminars and in the meetings, but at breakfast, at lunch, at dinner, with cocktails, sharing information. So it's a great community. No one can drive and have the growth that we all want in a vacuum on our own. It takes a lot of inputs, a lot of resources, and a peer group that helps shares it. So I'd like to say I'm going to share something that you got to have. If you'll be out something if you miss it. It's way more than what I'm going to speak to. It's just the whole event. I thoroughly enjoy and love them because I get to meet peers of mine I've known for 10 and 12 years. And this is when I see them connect with a lot of them, a lot of them.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun for that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of good camaraderie and a lot of good sharing of best practices and situations. And don't think that myself and my team have the corner on good solutions. We don't, not even close. I always walk away with stuff. I always walk away with good ideas. I always walk away with new friends and new people I've met. So it's just a good event.
Jim, thank you. For those who are interested in attending, even if you're not an SBE member already, go to sbeodyssey.com/conference. Jim, thank you. This has been an amazing episode. Thank you for all the leadership insights you've shared with us. And for those of you who are watching, make sure you subscribe. And thank you for watching and listening to the Leading HVAC podcast.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Timo. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Leading HVAC podcast. If you would like to learn more about SBE, you can find us online at sbeodyssey.com. That's sbeodyssey.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, we would appreciate it if you would leave us a review on this podcasting platform. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.